message is very, very simple. We want to educate the kids, not indoctrinate them.
She doesn't want these projects in her backyard, in Warringah. She wants them in yours.
What's wrong with Australia today?
For me, it's leadership. There's just a lack of leadership.
We should be energy independent here in Australia. We've got everything.
And it's good to see the community come out and really engage in this issue of parental rights.
You only have one vote, but it's very powerful.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Commanding the Narrative. My name is Tripp. Thank you for joining us. I don't think we'll have many live people tonight because it is very late on a Saturday evening, and I haven't prepared for this one. We haven't promoted it or anything like that. It's very spur of the moment, and the reason for that is because early on Friday morning, about 1:45 a.m., my wife gave birth to our new son, so it's all been very hectic and chaotic and a crazy time for sure. But they're resting nicely in the hospital. There were some unfortunately complications, but thankfully both mum and our new son are very healthy at the moment, recovering in hospital. My daughter's sleeping in bed, so we'll see if she walks into the room unexpectedly or not, because you just never know with kids. They never sleep they never sleep when you want them to sleep, but we'll see how we go. I'm pretty committed to this podcast and everything that we do on the ex-candidates and Commanding the Narrative, so I thought I'd jump on tonight and just do a quick live. I don't have a guest. I thought that would be too hard to manage, and I didn't know if I'd be able to do this or not, but here I am, my first podcast by myself, so I hope you can join me for this ride. I'm not even having had a chance of a shave or anything like that, but I want to get into it straight away, and we'll get into it the way that I always do, is just by letting you all know about Buy Me a Coffee. Now, there's no pressure for you to head to Buy Me a Coffee, but if you want to support us with what we do on all our podcasts, you can head to Buy Me a Coffee and throw us a few dollars. It does help pay for the streaming and everything else that we are doing or plan to do in the future. And a lot of people have been very gracious and very, I mean, it blows my mind that people are willing to part with their hard-earned money, especially in a cost of living crisis. And it really is a cost of living crisis at the moment. It blows me away that people want to part with their money just to support us, but we really, really do appreciate it. So if you could, that would be amazing, and we definitely do appreciate it. I want to also let you know about the t-shirt shop. We've had some orders come in already for the t-shirt shop, which is very exciting. And if you want to jump on there and get your own Commanding the Narrative t-shirt, I've got my order in right now. It's in the mail, so hopefully I can be wearing this one and others that we've got up there. Just head to xcandidates.tshirts.net.au and pick up your Commanding the Narrative t-shirt, and hey, wear it around, take a photo. If you can get in front of a well-known person, a politician, a celebrity, and wear our t-shirt and ask them to come on the show. One of the things that Adam and I do on the ex-candidates, and I can extend it to here on Commanding the Narrative as well, is if you can set up an interview with us, with a guest, you can come on and guest host. So how about that? If you can do that wearing one of our t-shirts, ask a certain person to come on the show, and if you can make that happen, you can come on and join us as a guest host as well. So I think that's a pretty good deal. And also, at the moment, there's a photo competition going on. It is the NREN photo competition where you can win $1,000. You just head to the NREN website, ren.com.au. Click this link at the top where it says win $1,000. Click for photo comp, and you can go in the running to win this $1,000 by taking maybe an interesting photo like this, where they've got a little teddy bear there, some destruction where some trees have been ripped down for a future renewables project, and whatever it may be. I know recently there was some solar panels destroyed by hail, and that didn't just happen in Texas. It's happened here in Australia as well. There's a whole bunch of land being cleared for solar solar projects, wind projects, high voltage transmission lines. There's windmills that have been on fire. So if you can get a photo of that and submit it to this competition, you could win $1,000. So I think that's a pretty good deal as well. So just head to, as I said, the nren.com.au website, click the link at the top, and you can go into the draw, and who knows what could come of that. But before we get started, also the Rumble, we get most of our views on Rumble, which is fantastic. Rumble is really about what we're about, free speech and expressing yourself without restrictions. And before, in the past, people on Rumble couldn't contribute to the chat live. There was no integration between StreamYard and Rumble, but now there is. So if you're on Rumble and you want to contribute and you want to say something, ask a comment, ask a question, or submit a comment, now we should be able to see it on StreamYard, and we'll be able to present it on the screen. So if you're on Rumble, please contribute. It's very important. Also, I've put the link in the chat. Please help me out tonight. I'm flying solo. So if you want to call in, we don't have anyone watching at the moment, which is understandable because I've only just put this live up and it is almost midnight on a Saturday night. Everyone's probably out partying or in bed. But if you want to call in, click the link. I'm happy to talk to you, hear comments, and we can have a conversation about anything that you want. But I want to start off tonight. As soon as I got home from taking my daughter out all day, we took her to the aquarium, and I took her to the aquarium, and we went to the hospital to visit mum and my new son, and then I took her out again tonight. She finally went to sleep, and I just wanted to check what's happening in the world, catch up with everything because I haven't been switched on. I went on YouTube, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has put up a new video promoting his aspirations to become president in America. And this video really blew me away. I've always been a big Donald Trump supporter. Obviously, I can't vote in the upcoming presidential election because I am Australian. I'm not American. I don't have that opportunity to vote in the presidential election. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is someone that really appeals to me. His policies really appeal to me. The way he presents himself, his message of unity, and he's not bombastic. He's very calm and rational. And a lot of people have misgivings about him because of his policies and his feelings on climate change in the past. But I think there's other issues that he's very strong on, which are very important to me, especially the vaccine issue, the COVID vaccination especially, and also the toxins and all the rubbish that's in our food, in our plastic, in our water, our environment, the stuff that we're really exposed to that no one ever talks about. You're a complete conspiracy theorist if you think that somehow our medications and our food and the environment is somehow working against us. But I have always taken a natural approach to health and well-being and everything in life. And the stuff that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is talking about really appeals to me. So I want to play this now. Let me know what you guys think. Even if you are watching this later, you can still comment after this. And let's hear what his pitch is to the American people.
In my independent campaign for president, liberals have been calling me a conservative, and conservatives have been calling me a liberal. This isn't just name calling. The confusion is genuine for many people, and maybe you yourself aren't sure what you are. I don't really think these categories are very useful anymore. My father was opposed by the liberal establishment when he ran for president in 1968. And so it's confusing even for me sometimes about how to label myself. But if I had to label myself, I would say that I'm a classic liberal or a Kennedy Democrat. So let me help you unravel what that all means, because I want you to vote for me or against me, not based upon the labels that people affix to me, but rather based on my position on the various issues. First, the classic liberal protects civil liberties from authoritarianism. For most of my life, it was the Republicans who sought to restrict freedom of speech and curtail other constitutional freedoms in the name of national security or law and order. For the last 10 years or so, it's been the Democrats who are restricting free speech and other constitutional rights. So who are the real liberals here? As president, I'm going to roll back the surveillance state and restore America as the land of liberty. Second, the classic liberal believes in free market capitalism, but understands that the need to protect the public from corporate excesses is also important. Without regulation and oversight, corporations cheat. They capture government agencies and they pervert free markets, transforming the system from free market capitalism into corporate crony capitalism, a system of this very cushy socialism for the rich and a merciless, barbaric capitalism for the poor. For example, they pollute the air and water and soil and leave the cost to the public. That's cheating. Or they infiltrate government and they write laws and regulations in their favor. In recent years, both political parties have failed to stop this undermining of our democracy by crooked industry lobbyists. As president, I'm going to level the playing field so that consumers and small businesses at last have a chance. I'm going to get corporate influence out of government once and for all. Third, a classic liberal sticks up for the little guy and the people who get left out. And the ranks of those who have been left out have been growing every year. As president, I'm going to reverse that trend and bring them back in. Fourth, and this might surprise you, a classic liberal favors a strong border. That's because uncontrolled immigration depresses wages, putting American workers in competition with an endless pool of easily exploited labor. As president, I'm going to bring order to the border. I'm going to end the humanitarian crisis there and allow the optimum level of lawful, orderly immigration into this country. The classic liberal maintains a healthy skepticism of the intelligence services and the war machine. The classic liberal seeks peace and pursues democracy. Recently, Democrats and Republicans have sought to outdo each other in their belligerence. As president, I'm going to keep us out of foreign conflicts and bring the resources home to rebuild our own country. Sixth, the classic liberal nurtures the future of our country, robust health and economic opportunities for young Americans, and the opportunity to get into a home will be my priority. Seventh, a classic liberal protects the environment. As president, I will return us to the traditional environmentalism that protects our wilderness, rebuilds soils, preserves our forests and rivers and endangered species and biodiversity. I'm going to get the toxic chemicals out of our food supply and our water as part of my drive to reduce the chronic disease epidemic in America. Eighth, classic liberalism recognizes that stable democracies require a strong middle class. Giant disparities in wealth between rich and poor create a configuration that is too unstable to support a constitutional republic. As president, I'm going to foster entrepreneurial ecosystems and prioritize Main Street over Wall Street and rebuild the American middle class. Finally, classic liberalism is about fairness. This economy has become extremely polarized as labor's share of the income has fallen steeply to the benefit of corporations and the super wealthy. As president, I'm going to raise the minimum wage, support labor, close tax loopholes for the super rich, cut housing costs, and increase support for women and children with free daycare and a stronger food stamp program. I love the fact that creative, industrious, hardworking people can get rich in our country, but we also have to take care of the less fortunate so that no child ever goes hungry in America. Call me liberal, call me a Kennedy Democrat, call me independent or conservative, whatever you want. I don't care. These are the things that I believe in, and that's where I stand. If you resonate with my vision for our country, then I invite you to stand with me. I invite you to be part of the reweaving of America. I invite you to join our coalition of liberals, conservatives, committed to taking this country back, not just for the left or right, but for the American people.
Okay, so look, I know that was a long video. I'm sure that we won't get sued for copyright or anything like that because we are getting his message out, and obviously he's put it on a platform like YouTube to get that message out there. One of the things he started off with was by saying he's not a liberal and he's not a conservative, and that's generally how I feel. I don't like being put in a box either. I guess I'm often put in the conservative box. And when you're trying to describe yourself to people, that's, I suppose, the easiest way of being able to describe yourself to people. You say, oh, I'm a conservative. I'm on the conservative side of politics. But in reality, I'm just an individual. I have my own individual thoughts and feelings. And that's what I really am. And I feel that this strategy of putting people in boxes is really cultural Marxism at the end of the day. Is a strategy that they use. They either call you a racist, a misogynist, an anti-Semite, an anti-vaxxer, a cooker, all these terms that they'd come up that really mean nothing. Like if someone calls you a Nazi, what does that actually mean? Do we even know what that means? Have we ever been taught what Nazism is or what it stands for? If you were able to, what would, like if someone called you a Nazi now, obviously that would be a negative connotation. You would be like, well, no, I'm not a Nazi. But what does that even mean? If someone calls you an anti-vaxxer, what does that actually mean? Does that mean that you're just against the COVID vaccine or against all vaccines? And I don't think it's that clear cut. Maybe some people are against all vaccines. Some people may be against a certain vaccine, but not others. Things are very black and white. There's all different, sorry, things are not black and white. Things are often shades of gray. And by people putting you in a box, by labeling you something, that is making the argument black and white. And all they really want to do is they want to put you in that little box to shut you up, to take you out of the discussion and to take you out of the argument, because really they don't have anything to argue with you, against you. Your argument is actually superior to theirs, but they want to shut you out of the conversation straight away and get you to self-censor. So it's brilliant, I think, that he's come out and really formulated his whole campaign based on the fact that he's neither this box or that box. This is what he's saying. This is what I stand for. You can vote for me if you want. You can vote against me if you don't want to. And I think that is exactly what we need to get back to. We know as an independent, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is standing for what he believes in. He's not ruled by party politics. And I think party politics is a huge problem, not only in America, but here in Australia as well. You have people in parliament that may have a view that is completely different to their party on certain issues, but they have to toe the party line. And that is incredibly dangerous because it is meant to be representative government, and not all people in that parliament are just meant to think alike and toe the party line. They're meant to represent their communities and the specific needs of their communities. What might work in Melbourne or what might work in Sydney might not work out in rural Australia, might not work in Tamworth, or might not work in Rockhampton, or might not work in Fremantle. So you need to represent your community, not your party. And that is a huge problem, a huge issue. And I think this is very refreshing that we have RFK Jr. Obviously, you could argue that Trump doesn't toe the Republican line. He's almost an independent himself, a free thinker. Trump really let me down during COVID, in my view, and the rollout of the vaccines. That's where the shine came off him a little bit, whereas RFK Jr. is representing more of what I believe in. And some of the things he raised was restricting free speech and rolling back the surveillance state. Now, that is a massive problem in America, and it's becoming a massive problem here in Australia, especially with the Liberal and Labor governments, whether it be the former Morrison government and now the Albanese government, pushing through laws like the misinformation and disinformation legislation. In the end of the day, that's a surveillance state. They're trying to restrict you from your speech and your thoughts and what you think and how you express that thought. Why would anyone want that? And we'll get into that a little bit later. But in America, you only have to go through their airports and know what happened there after 9/11 to know that the surveillance state that they have become, and which is not what they intended when they first set up America after they won the War of Independence against the British and established their constitution and their Bill of Rights. It's not meant to be a surveillance state. It's meant to be free people with this grand experiment of self-governance, and have really moved away from that. So hopefully, whether it's not RFK Jr. or someone else, they can come back and start to roll back this surveillance state. And I agree completely with his point of view on that one. He also talked about socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor. Well, that's what socialism is at the end of the day. If you look throughout history, who funded the socialists? It was Wall Street. It was the bankers, the Rothschilds and all those groups out there. They're the ones that bankrolled Lenin and Trotsky and the Russian Revolution and communism in other areas. It benefits them. It's not against capitalism and big business. It supports big business, and same with fascism as well. We need a free market. We need competition. You don't want duopolies like Coles and Woolworths. They're basically the same thing. Same with the four big banks. They're basically the same thing. They're offering the same thing. There's no real competition there. You need competition in a free market society. And a lot of the time, that's why they call it crony capitalism, because it's not really the capitalism that we're experiencing now is not really true capitalism. It's just the rich throwing around money, and we see that on the stock market with big hedge funds, big companies here in Australia, big superannuation companies that almost control the market with the amounts of money that they have to influence the market. And they do it with your money. That's the travesty of it all. They take your superannuation, or they may take your pension funds, or whatever it might be, whether it's here in Australia or America, and they use that money to heavily influence the stock market, and they almost rig and control the system. Sometimes they lose, but oftentimes they win. So we really need to get back to supporting the little person, supporting small business and the middle class. That is the backbone of all Western countries, and it should be the backbone of countries all around the world, especially here in Australia. The best times here in Australia are when we have a big mining boom, which thank God we've had that in recent decades, because who knows where we'd be without the mining boom. But small business and the middle class are the things that drive growth in countries like Australia, and those people are getting crushed. Just like the farm, you can throw the farmers in there as well. I heard some statistics today, and I haven't brought it up here, but the rates of suicide amongst farmers is skyrocketing because they're just getting squeezed. And we talked to Wade Northhausen a few podcasts ago about that and his experience of what he's seen on the ground. And I've spoken to farmers in the past, whether it be water rights or renewable projects, high voltage transmission lines going through their properties, the cost of selling their product to the big chains like Coles and Woolworths, and the small rates that they get from that. Everything in government is seemingly supporting big business, and it's crushing the little guy. And it's the little guy that we really need to support. He also brought up corporate influence. Now, this is massive, corporate influence. It's meant to, as I said at the beginning, it's meant to be representative government. Corporations constantly lobby politicians. I've heard stories of politicians walking the halls of Parliament House, and they're just surrounded by lobbyists. And Michael O'Neill came on the Ex-Candidates and told us this story where a politician was speaking to him, and he said, "Michael, you do realize that the big pharmaceutical companies will send in a very attractive girl, dressed very, very nicely, holding a nice glossy brochure that might be only a page or two long, with very short, sharp points. And they often come bearing gifts and little trinkets, and they'll take you out to dinner, and they'll show you a nice time. And then the other side comes in, they're disheveled, they're not dressed up, they don't really care for that sort of thing. They're holding wads of paper with all this information that no one's ever going to read, not whether it's a busy politician or just the everyday person. I've seen it myself. I've seen people go up to politicians at rallies and they'll be holding stacks of paper, all this information, and it's usually torn and bent and got stains all over it. I don't know what people have done with it all, but no one's going to read it all. They don't have time. And that's the problem. All of these politicians see are these lobbyists. And I often think about Governor Jesse Ventura when he came into power in Minnesota. He banned all lobbyists. Why can't we do that here in Australia? Cut them out. Say if you're part of big pharma or big business or whatever, you can't have direct contact with a member of parliament. Members of parliament are meant to represent their constituents. They're not meant to represent big business. So I'm glad to hear that out of RFK Jr. Strong borders, I think that's self-explanatory. It's good to hear that from him. Open borders just doesn't work. I mean, even if you have the biggest heart and you want to really support people that are from war-torn areas or people that have been politically oppressed or just really bad countries and they want to flee and have a better life, everyone wants to support that, but you need to be able to accommodate them. It's not an issue of immigration. It's really an issue of migration. If you're getting a million people come into your country, whether they're coming in from China or coming in from Queensland, you now have a million people that you need to house, you need to provide services for them. And if you haven't accommodated for that, it's not going to work. You need to have a plan in place before you bring in large amounts of people into the country. And without a secure border in the United States of America, people are flooding across the border. We're lucky here in Australia that we don't have those borders. We're surrounded by ocean. Now, that presents issues in itself with boat people, but a lot of people are coming in by plane, but we don't have the problem of people streaming unrestricted across borders like they do in America and Europe, thankfully. But we still have problems with governments like the Albanese government that is allowing almost 1 million. I've heard accounts of 1 million people come in through their immigration schemes and their migration schemes. Where are we going to house them? Do we have the housing for them? And that's the first issue. There's other issues about providing energy, electricity, water, hospitals, schools, roads, infrastructure. All of these issues need consideration. And if we're just going to bring people into the country without a plan in place, then it's chaos. And we can see that in the housing market and how housing prices are really skyrocketing, and they're skyrocketing beforehand as well. So that's a strong point, I think. Healthy skepticism of the intelligence system. Now, this is a big one. I think you can say a healthy skepticism of government as well. It doesn't seem that government is working for us anymore, unfortunately, and doesn't feel like our bureaucracy is working for us either. So we need a healthy skepticism. They're meant to be representing us. It's government by representation. It's government for the people, whether it be America or here in Australia or anywhere in the Western world. And it seems that, as I said before, whether it be politicians just doing the will of their party or being swayed by big business, it's not meant to work that way. So I think that's a very important point on RFK Jr.'s in part. Robust health and economic opportunity. Sorry, it's been a big week, so I can barely get my words out. Yes, I agree with this. I think health is a massive issue, and I've just seen it in the hospitals. They got all this equipment, monitors, gadgets, everything plugged into a PowerPoint, drugs everywhere. They're bringing my wife drugs all the time, all different tablets and pills, and she doesn't even know what's going in her. Nothing natural. Nothing. Isn't there something wrong with that? Somehow a chemical a pharmaceutical drug is meant to work better than basic nutrition. Does that make sense to anyone? I know people rely a lot on the pharmaceutical industry and drugs, but for me, it just doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense how doctors just want to cut you open all the time. And look, the doctors are fantastic, the nurses are fantastic, the midwives are fantastic, but you only know what you've been taught. And are they being taught the right things? I think we need to have this discussion. I think we need to really investigate health and our well-being and what we're being swayed by. We know the pharmaceutical companies are very influential, and I just spoke about that a little bit before. So that's a really strong point. This is something that really rings true to me. Traditional environmentalism, removing toxic chemicals out of food and water. Well, again, I mean, this goes back to robust health. I mean, we need our environment, our food, our water to be clean, to be natural. It's only going to help us to have those things. If you're pumping chemicals into all of these things, the body can only filter out so much. The body is a tremendously amazing vehicle that can detoxify these horrible things coming into the body, but it can only do so much. And if we're being overloaded by all these different things, then sometimes it catches up to you. So look, to finish off, I think it was a really amazing presentation, a really amazing video that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has put out. And I hope to see him on the debate stage. I mean, here in Australia, as I said, we can't contribute to the presidential election in any way, but we can sit here with our popcorn and watch the wild ride. And we'll have to wait and see if Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has any cut through. But the stuff that he's saying now really resonates with me. I'm enjoying his campaign. I've been following it for quite a while now, and I really think the Libertarian Party here in Australia really needs to follow what RFK Jr. is saying. I think of what a lot of what he's saying probably resonates with libertarians. I hope I'm not speaking out of line by saying that, because I'm not a libertarian myself. But I would suggest the Libertarian Party pay close attention to what RFK Jr. is saying and maybe adopt some of his approach, because I think it's extremely powerful. And look, if you disagree, please let me know, because I would like to hear all your thoughts about that whole presentation that we've seen from RFK. Now, the big other issue here in Australia at the moment is this Albo Albany. It's been a huge week. I can't even talk anymore. Anthony Albanese government and the Elon Musk and Twitter. Look, I'm a free speech absolutist. I think free speech is paramount. And it really terrifies me that government is trying to suppress free speech. It was bad enough when the social media companies were trying to suppress free speech and expression. Look, sure, there's misinformation out there. Sure, there are dodgy characters out there who may, for better or worse, maybe they think that they're correct, and that could be absolutely wrong. That could be me in a lot of cases. It could be anyone. It could be everyone. Everyone can be corrected with their speech, but it should never ever be silenced. And I think everyone knows that. Only the authoritarians want to silence free speech because it suits their cause. They don't want anyone pointing out their downsides or what they're doing wrong. They just want people to agree and follow along with them, because that's what authoritarians want. They want to think that there's some supreme and ultimate power that needs to look down upon their peasants and control them. So, as I said, I'm a free speech absolutist. And do I think that the footage of Emmanuel being stabbed should be censored off the internet? Well, firstly, he's come out and said that he doesn't want it to be censored. My question is that by taking that down, is that free speech? It's not really speech. I guess it's an image, a video of what happened. So Is this a free speech issue? Or is this just an issue of government overreach? Especially from this e-safety commissioner who was unelected, just a bureaucrat. I mean, who put them there? Are they there for the right reasons? Are they capable? Are they up to the job? Do they have a sound? Are they of sound character that they can make these decisions? I think people. We've got to put a little bit more faith in people. If people don't want to see this, then they can self-censor. They don't have to watch it. They don't have to look at it. But guess what? The world is a dark place. Horrible things happen. Horrible things. Worse than what we saw with the Bishop Mari Emmanuel. It was horrible that he got stabbed. It was horrible that it was being live streamed. It was horrible that people had to see it. And it's horrible that people rioted afterwards. And there was division. But it happened. And things like that happen in life. What, are you going to shut yourself off from it? I don't want to see stuff like that. There's more horrific things that have happened throughout history. And it happen every single day. But if you shut yourself off from it, then you're living in a naive world, a naive perspective. Go and study World War II or any war, but specifically World War II because it's quite well documented. And go read the accounts of soldiers and civilians, not only just soldiers, but civilians, and what they had to live through, specifically in Europe, and the horrors of what they faced. We think of war as just tanks rolling across a battlefield and armies facing off against each other, and sure, they get shot and blown up, and we all know that. But it's much deeper. Humans are incredibly cruel. Not all of them, but there are people out there that are incredibly cruel. And for these people that get on their high horse and support wars and support this side against the other side and all this garbage. It's garbage. At the end of the day, it is politicians versus innocent people. It's politicians coming up with these conflicts, and the innocent people suffer. I'm sure there's people in Gaza that have no ill will towards the Palestinians, and the same on the Israelis. The same on the other side. I'm sure there's people in Israel that have no ill will to the Palestinians. I'm sure the case is even more stark in the Ukraine. I'm sure there's Ukrainians that have no ill will towards the Russians. I'm sure the Russians feel a brotherhood with the Ukrainians. But at the end of the day, it's the politicians pulling these strings, and unfortunately, innocent people go along with it. Go and read some accounts of World War II. There was one I heard the other day. And if you don't want to hear this, this is real life. They would cut people open, pull out their intestines, tie them to a pole, and then get them to walk around the pole until they died. That's real life. That's real life. And look, if people want to censor that sort of stuff and shut their eyes to it and cut themselves off for it, then you are not living in reality, because that stuff happens. 16-year-old kids walks into a church and stabs a bishop. That happens. That's real life. Unfortunately, we need to be subjected to that stuff so we have a real perspective of what the world is like, so we can better ourselves from that. We don't want things like this to happen. If you don't know that they're happening, then what can you do to stop them in the future? So people might disagree with me, and that's fine. But look, if we start shutting ourselves off to what's happening out there, then what hope do we have? We don't live with rainbows around us and unicorns and fairy dust. The world's a horrible place in a lot of accounts, and the world's a fantastic and beautiful place in the vast majority of circumstances, but horrible things happen. And if you're going to have this e-safety commissioner or Anthony Albanese dictating to you what you can and can't watch, that is extremely dangerous. Extremely dangerous, because it's altering your perception of the world. And it's like the Germans in World War II. The Nazis were distorting their perception of the world. They didn't know what was happening on the front lines. They didn't know that the Soviets were coming closer and closer to their borders. They didn't know that Germany was losing the war. And they didn't know what was happening with the Jews and the Holocaust, because the Nazis were distorting their perception. Now, answer this question for me. Is it that much different to what these disinformation laws are proposing, or what the e-safety commissioner is proposing? Unfortunately, what happened with the bishop is real life. You want to censor it? You want to hide it? People have to self-censor. They don't want to see it. If they don't want to see if they don't want their kids to see it, then you are in control of that, not government. Because once government gets in control of things, they never do it right. They always screw things up. And it's a very dangerous part. What's even more dangerous for me, well, maybe not more dangerous, but very, very concerning, was that Peter Dutton came out and also supported the misinformation and disinformation laws. And this is basically what Peter Dutton had to say.
When it comes to the misinformation and disinformation, the government does have, well, it's working on draft laws to try and put in place some much tougher rules for the social media companies. Where are you at on this? Are you prepared to back such laws?
Yeah, we are, and happy to have a look at anything the government puts forward, as we've said over the last week with the horrendous scenes that we've seen. There's obviously AI tools that are available. There's a lot of technology, because you're talking about at scale, and people who get accounts closed down pop up under another name and pseudonym otherwise. As Home Affairs Minister, we tried to get all of the Five Eyes partners together.
The misinformation laws, though, when the government produced some draft laws last year, the coalition said they were a debacle, they were Orwellian and so on. Have the events of the last week shifted your position?
Well, David, we need to get the right balance. So that is, we don't want to impinge on your ability to express a view in a democracy. It's a key fundamental element of who we are, that people can express their view, but they need to do it respectfully. And as I say, the same laws need to apply in the real world as they do online. And it's a matter of enforcing the laws and taking action, giving the e-safety commissioner further powers if that's required.
And then when it comes to the misinformation and disinformation, the government does have, well, it's working on draft laws to try and put in place some much tougher rules for the social media companies. Where are you at on this? Are you prepared to back such?
So he talks about balance, which I think is very important in life. You do need balance with things. But I think in this instance, it is far more dangerous to try and achieve that balance through censorship. And I'm really opposed to censorship, because where do you draw the line? And you may say, well, there is no line. It's up to someone's discretion, and it's obvious when there's misinformation. Well, is it? Is it really obvious? Is it really obvious when there's misinformation? It's very dangerous for all sides of politics once you start to try and determine what is truth. Because unfortunately, in a lot of cases, truth can be subjective. And you're really playing with fire if you want to go down this path. Because if you think you're in control now, you may be in control now. If you're a Labor supporter and you think everything is rosy right now, well, it is for you. It may be rosy for you as a Green supporter as well. But what happens when a Liberal Party gets into power? Or what happens if a Conservative Party rises up? What happens if One Nation one day get into power and Pauline Hanson is prime minister and she has these laws behind her? Are you going to support them then? It's very, very dangerous. Got a comment here from Jelena. Thank you for joining us tonight. I know it's very late. This is not democracy. This is communism. This created politicians' party. Well, it is moving more and more towards communism and Marxism, unfortunately, and we need to be really conscious of this. As they say, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Are we doomed to repeat the failures of communism in the past because it hasn't worked anywhere? You can point to China, but I'm sure Chinese people don't love it. Some may say that they do, but are they speaking really from the heart? So, yes, that's a very good comment, Jelena. We are moving more and more towards communism and more away from what this country really should be, and that's a free and open society where people are willing to express their views. And look, I know a lot gets blamed on social media, and in a lot of cases, the social media is to blame. I don't think social media has really enhanced our lives in any way, really. I think it's been a detriment to our existence. But unfortunately, there are going to be people out there that will put up misinformation at times, but it's up to free-thinking people with intelligence to discern what is right and wrong, not government. Because government can use it as a weapon where it's just one person sitting in their house thinking to themselves, is this misinformation? And is what I'm seeing here correct? I think it's up to the individual to determine what's misinformation. And if they deem it to be misinformation, they can turn it off. And I think that's the best way of doing it, not relying on government, because governments, unfortunately, either they're only in it for themselves or they're completely misguided by advisors that are probably just fresh out of uni and been indoctrinated themselves. So it is very, very dangerous. But unfortunately, things are not moving in the right direction in that department. So look, we just have to keep pushing back. Keep emailing your local member. Keep supporting pages that are speaking out of this. I know Millie Fontana on Instagram is doing a lot on this. She's putting up videos all the time. So support Millie. Follow Millie. Follow other people out there that are pushing back against it. And spread their content now while you can. Write letters to Anthony Albanese. You can contact him. He's the member for Grainler. Send emails to his office. Overwhelm them. They don't like being overwhelmed, especially when they're sitting on 32% of a primary vote. So overwhelm them, push back, and let them know that you don't support what they're saying. Reach out to Peter Dutton and say, hey, you're meant to be a liberal. You're meant to be standing up for the We Believe statement. And we can go through the We Believe statement a little bit. I've got it here because it is very important. It's meant to be what the Liberal Party stands for. Digger, thank you for joining us, Digger. This is authoritarianism run by our totalitarian governments and politicians. You're exactly right, Digger. It's certainly heading that way. I mean, it's a horrible thing to say, and you probably think that I'm crazy for saying it, but I mean, when did you ever think we would be discussing a government trying to bring in misinformation and disinformation legislation or a digital ID or any sort of this legislation? It's just completely horrible. Now, I brought it up, so let's quickly go through it because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of good people in the Liberal Party, and they're really trying to wake the Liberal Party up to this statement. Now, this is the We Believe statement that Sir Robert Menzies issued in Canberra in November 9th, 1954. So he'd already established the Liberal Party by this point. But he really wanted to frame what the Liberal Party stood for, and 17 points. Now, the first one is we believe in the Crown as the enduring embodiment of our national unity, and as a symbol of that unity, and as a symbol of that other unity that exists between all nations of the British Commonwealth. We believe in Australia. We believe in the individual. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in the spirit of the volunteer. We believe that rights connote duties. We believe that it is the supreme function of government to assist in the development of personality. We believe in liberty. We're losing our liberty, unfortunately. We believe that the class war is a false war. I think we need more people out there saying that one. We believe that liberalism means flexibility and progress. We believe that improved living standards depend upon high productivity and efficient service. We believe that national, financial, and economic power and policy are not to be designed to control men's lives. We believe in the great human freedoms. I'm going to read this whole line out. To worship, to think, to speak, to choose, to be ambitious, to be independent, to be industrious, to acquire skill, to seek, to earn reward. Look, number 13, we believe in great human freedoms. I mean, if they wanted to delete all other 16 points and just keep this one, I think the Liberal Party would be in a far better place than what it is now. Number 14, we believe in social justice. We believe in religious and we believe in religious and racial tolerance among our citizens. We believe that all forms of industry, primary or secondary or otherwise, depend upon each other. And finally, we believe that under the blessing of divine providence and given goodwill, mutual tolerance and understanding, energy, and an individual sense of purpose, there is no task which Australia cannot perform and no difficulty which she cannot overcome. When have you heard that out of a politician recently? This was Robert Menzies, who formed the Liberal Party of Australia. Is Peter Dutton talking like this? I think overall, Peter Dutton is good. He's far better than Anthony Albanese. But maybe he needs to go back and read this document. And maybe he can start speaking like RFK Jr. and saying we need to scale back some of government, a lot of government, not some, a lot of government. They don't need to start imposing more rules and regulations and legislation upon us and our thoughts and our speech and our expression. They should be not looking at their constituents. They need to be looking at themselves. They need to be looking at government and saying, where are we going wrong? Because we've gone wrong really badly. The bureaucracy, they need to look at that. Digger, thanks again for joining us. Digger says, Liberal want the same as Labor. Well, the Liberal Party was the first people that put forward this disinformation legislation. But Digger says the disinfo, the bill, the cashless society, digital currency, digital ID, and the climate change scam. It seems like we're fighting battles on every front, Digger, which is really unfortunate. And we are really fighting all these battles. But look, as I said, write to your local MP, write to Anthony Albanese, write to Peter Dutton, write to specific members of the executive in parliaments, not just the federal parliament, but state parliaments as well. Really start to pressure them. They're not sitting on big margins. The Liberal Party is on 34% of the primary vote. The Labor Party, as I said, is on 32%. I mean, they're at a tipping point. How much lower can they go? How much further off the cliff can they go? So there's not much play. There's not much, as Paul Keating used to say, political capital. They don't have any political capital. So you need to push back. Unfortunately, people need to get more involved and more active. Digger says, 100%, mate. It's crazy and time for the people to wake up and make a stand. Yes, I agree completely. It is time for people to push back and let these politicians know And look, that's what happened with the misinformation, disinformation bill originally. There was a huge backlash from the people, and that's what suppressed it for a long time. But we need to maintain the rage. Alan Jones used to say that all the time. People need to maintain the rage and make sure that we put these stuff to bed as quickly as we can, because we can't put up with legislation like this in this country. We just can't. Now, I want to talk about, before I finish up, a tweet was sent through to me, and I unfortunately don't have the tweet with me, but it was sent through by Kim, who has been very supportive of a lot of the things that Adam and I do, not only through the podcast, but behind the scenes as well. And the tweet was basically saying that preferences don't work in Australia, and at the end of the day, really the only choice is Liberal and Labor, and there's no point supporting minor parties. And in a lot of ways, at the end of the day, you are going to get a Liberal or Labor government. If you are supporting parties like One Nation and the Libertarian Party, the stark reality is that you pretty much only the Liberal Party are in a position to govern, which is unfortunate, because I think the Liberal Party really needs a real shake-up. And there's a lot of people in the Liberal Party that shouldn't be there, in my opinion. There's a lot of good people there, and I support a lot of those people and what they stand for. But unfortunately, in recent times, it pains me to say this, the Liberal Party has been making some really fundamental mistakes. Jelena says it is Agenda 2030, and we probably should spend a podcast talking about that. Although I think a lot of people know about Agenda 2030, but more people need to know about Agenda 2030. Diggers put a comment here. Why can't the smaller parties such as One Nation, United Australia Party, Citizens Party, to name a few, form an alliance, amalgamate, and come together to stop this corrupt two-party preferred system? Well, look, I've been in, I was in One Nation for a time, and unfortunately, these parties are driven by ego and self-interest, and unfortunately, money and power. That was my experience anyway. And look, I'm talking completely at the top. If you're talking about One Nation at a candidate level, if you're talking about One Nation at a volunteer level, membership level, they are fantastic people. They get smeared with all these taglines, as I mentioned in the beginning. They're either called racists or misogynists or whatever it might be, and they're just not. They're real people that are standing up for themselves. But actually, unfortunately, at the top, I can't support the people that run the party, and I just don't think they have the interests of the people within their party at their best interests at heart. Look, Malcolm Roberts is fantastic. Sarah Graham in South Australia is fantastic. I will always support what they're doing, because I think they're exactly what Australian politicians should be. But unfortunately, One Nation really isn't the party at this point in time, from what I've seen personally. And look, the United Australia Party, they're talking about them not even being able to run the next federal election. So, Digger, unfortunately, I mean, what parties are going to merge? And is it really going to change the vote? If all these parties did merge, is it really going to change anything? I mean, I think a lot of people feel like their vote is wasted by voting for these parties, because at the end of the day, the preferences will flow back to the Liberal Party. Diggers also commented, so they don't really want to save this country or our democracy, otherwise they would come together. Well, you could be right. So what options do we have, mate? Well, the options are us. Unfortunately, we have to get involved. We have to, as I said, these especially the major parties. The Liberal Party is sitting on 34% of the primary vote. Their membership is the lowest they've ever been. So, unfortunately, the call needs to go out there for everyday people to join the Liberal Party, influence them from within, have a groundswell of people rush into the party to reform it. And if it ends up that doesn't work, well, maybe another party needs to form at another point in time. And unfortunately, we've got all these parties running around, and it dilutes the vote. And maybe we could go into that a bit now, because I don't think people really understand preferences, at least on the right side of politics. The left side of politics do understand it, and they use it very effectively. The left have a really strong preference discipline. A lot of the times in electorates, the Greens vote, they will often preference Labor second in 80% to 90% of cases. So 80% to 90% of Greens votes goes back to Labor, whereas on the Conservative side of things, it's more at 50%. So if someone votes for at best, 50% at best, sometimes it's even lower. So if someone votes for the Libertarian Party, for example, then their vote sprays around everywhere. So that vote is lost, essentially. So let's have a good example. This is the Wentworth 2022 federal election. This was between predominantly Dave Sharma of the Liberal Party and Allegra Spender, who's an independent. And Allegra Spender ended up winning with a two-party preferred of 54%. But if you look down here, the first preference, she only got 35.8%. Dave Sharma got 40.5% of the primary vote, still lost. It's because of preferences. So Labor got 10% and the Greens got 8%. So you could say that's 18 to 19%, probably more like 19% of the vote. United Australia got 2%, Liberal Democrats got 1.5%, and One Nation got 1%. So combined, they're sitting almost at 5%. So unfortunately, in this case, the preferences from Labor and the Greens went to the Teal, Allegra Spender, and that took her over the Liberal candidate, even though the Liberal candidate won on first preferences. Now you might say, well, maybe that's why we should have first past the post here in Australia, because in that case, Dave Sharma would have been elected, and since he's been able to get into the Senate anyway, so he was I guess put back into Parliament. But the Liberal Party did lose Wentworth, which is for a long time always been a strong Liberal Party seat. But the preferences is where it really comes in, and there's other examples out there where preferences, when used effectively, can really change the result, especially if it's a close result with the primary vote. Now, one thing I think, as I said, the Conservative side of politics really have ill discipline when it comes to preferences. They don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to be told how to vote. That's hence why I guess they're on the right. They're more free thinking, but there are consequences to that. And the minor parties, I know I can understand why you want to put the Liberal Party down the list, but if you put the Labor Party ahead of Liberal, then you're going to get a Labor member. Or if you put the Greens ahead or something like that, you got to think about where your preferences flow. Now, if you're voting one Libertarian, you can vote 2 One Nation, you can vote 3 UAP, but if you vote 4 Liberal, most likely your vote will go to the Liberal Party and you'll get a Conservative government or a right-leaning government. Now, in quotes, we say Liberal could be right-leaning because unfortunately they haven't been swaying that. It doesn't appear to be that way, at least in former governments, in my opinion. It could definitely be a hell of a lot better. But if you're going to just spray your votes off everywhere, then that's really the reason why the Labor Party was able to get elected to government on 32% of the primary vote, because a lot of their preferences came from the Greens. And as I said, they have 80 to 90% preference discipline, whereas the right side of things have more like 50% in most, in best cases. Now, sure, the Liberal Party hasn't really helped the matter because they've often preferenced parties like One Nation last. In the recent Cook by-election, they preferenced the Libertarians second last. They preferenced the Animal Justice ahead of the Libertarians. It doesn't help matters. I mean, the Liberal Party, if it really is serious about getting into government, needs to work with the minor parties, the Libertarians, the One Nation Party, the UAP Party, if it still happens to be around, the Citizens Party. I don't know too much about the Citizens Party, Digger, but if they are on the right side of politics then the Liberal Party needs to be open to working with those parties, just like the Labor Party works with the Greens. And look, the Liberal Party has a coalition with the Nationals, and I really shouldn't be putting all my focus on the Liberal Party. It is a coalition. I often forget about the Nationals because I've always lived in Sydney, and you don't ever see the Nationals. I've only ever seen the Nationals once when I helped out in Shepparton in the Victorian election, because I'd always been a city boy. But it is a Liberal national coalition, so both parties need to focus more on working with the minor parties. But people that vote for minor parties really need to start using your preferences. And Digger, you're talking about the minor parties merging, and amalgamating. Well, they wouldn't have to if people were preferencing correctly. So if you're going to vote 1 Libertarians, 2 UAP, 3 One Nation, essentially that's one block. It's really one vote for one of all those 3 parties. Whichever one of those 3 parties outperforms the other 2, well, then hopefully we could get a case where 80 to 90% of the preferences go to that party, and it gives them a better chance of going forward. And then ultimately, hopefully, those votes filter back to the coalition. But if you're a Labor supporter and you vote, or a Greens supporter and you want to vote Greens, you guys are already doing this. I mean, if you're a Greens person, you probably are putting Labor 2 or 3 or something above the Liberal Party, because that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a very good discipline on the left side of politics. But yeah, I just wanted to raise that because preferences are incredibly important, and the more that we can talk about it and try and educate people, I think the better, because I think a lot of people just don't understand. They know who they're going to vote for, they put the one there, and then they spray the numbers around everywhere after that, and it is incredibly dangerous because it could have, it probably will have consequences, because if you are voting for a minor party, then there will be a preference flow, and your vote will end up somewhere. So you need to be conscious of that. So just to finish up, I do want to wrap things up because I need to get to bed and get to the hospital again tomorrow. But Digger's got some final comments. It seems Labor will run this country for years to come, and at the same time turn us into another communist China. Well, if you follow the recent polling, Labor's going backwards. I don't think they'll lose the next election. The Liberal Party still need to win over 20 seats. So when Tony Abbott won in 2013, he picked up 18 seats, and that was considered a landslide. And I don't think Peter Dutton's in a position to pick up 20 seats. But what we might see is a minority government and a hung parliament, in which case Labor will have to govern with the Greens and potentially the Teals. I mean, what's worse, a Labor outright government or Labor beholden to the Greens and the Teals? We'll have to wait and see on that one. But as we saw when we had the last hung parliament and with Julia Gillard, it was only one more election cycle before the Liberals got back in. So I don't think Labor will be in power for a long time. It just doesn't seem to go that way here in this country. And look, maybe that's wishful thinking. I hope that it doesn't happen that way, but we'll have to wait and see. Final comment from Digger. The Citizen Party is running the campaign to sign the petition for an Australia Post People's Bank. I haven't heard that one before. As I said, I don't know much about the Citizens Party. The danger of supporting parties like the Citizens Party is the vast majority of people have just never heard of them, and you're not going to get elected. So I don't want to say it's a wasted vote. As I said, if you are going to vote for a party like that, you need to ensure that you're using your preferences effectively, because a party like that is just not going to get any traction, because as I said, I've heard of them, but I don't even really know too much about them. Digger says it's on their Facebook website. Well, look, thank you, Digger. We can look that up. We can check out the Citizens Party and see what they stand for. But again, look, if they really want to be effective, then they're going to have to run in every seat. And that's just to support their upper house candidate as well, because it does help a lot when you do have lower house candidates supporting upper house candidates, and it's really just a way of getting the name of the party out there. You got to think about it. There's 100,000 people in each electorate. You need to get your face in front of those 100,000 people, and not only just once, but I've heard that in today's world, in the digital era, you need to get your message in front of people 15 to 20 times before they start to hear it. So how are you going to get your message in front of 100,000 people in your electorate, or the whole state if you're running for the Senate, 15 to 20 times? If you're a minute party like the Citizens Party, or even a minor party like One Nation, you have to self-fund your campaign. The Teals are spending the Teals, Zali Steggall spent $750,000, and that was the least of the Teals. Some of the Teals spent over $2 million on their election campaigns. How are these minor parties going to spend $2 million to get their message 15 to 20 times in front of every 100,000 people in their electorate? It's just not going to happen. It's a big reason why unfortunately, we're not going to get. We don't have that bigger reach at the moment. Hopefully, one day we can build our way up to that. But it is incredibly hard, and so you have to be very careful to support minor parties. I don't want to talk you out of it, because I think minor parties are important. But at this stage of the game, at least, the Liberal Party is the only party on the right side of politics that is in a position to get into government. So really, I think anyone listening to this, you have two options. First option is to join the Liberal Party. Get your friends and family and like-minded people to join the Liberal Party. And I don't want to call it branch stacking, because branch stacking is bringing outside people in that don't know anything about what they're doing, and that's to sway the votes. What you're really doing is you're bringing good people in, like-minded people that really want to see great things for this country and have a unified political mindset to get involved, which is exactly what is meant to be happening. So you got to get more people involved in the Liberal Party, and hopefully you can change it from within. The other option is to support a minor party, and if you do choose that route, just please take note of what I've said, because I have been through the minor party route, and it is incredibly hard for reasons as I mentioned. And if you are going to support a party like the Libertarian Party or One Nation or the UAP or the Citizens Party, have strong preference discipline. Make sure you do vote one for that party, but where you put your number 2, 3, 4, etc., is effective and is strategic, and you know exactly what you're doing. Don't just let your numbers spray around, because that is why the Labor Party and Anthony Albanese can become Prime Minister based on 32% of the primary vote, which is nothing. But that's our system. So I better wrap it up. I better get to bed, because my daughter will be up early in the morning, and I'll no doubt need to take her to the playground or another big adventure like today. Digger says, great work, mate. We appreciate your efforts. Thank you very much, Digger. I appreciate you. I appreciate the comments that you've made tonight, and for watching. And I appreciate everyone who has been watching tonight or will end up watching this at a future date. The first podcast I've done on my own. I don't know how I feel about it. I'll have to watch it back and make sure I didn't make any mistakes or say anything out of line, which is that's just natural when you're flying by the seat of your pants. Sometimes you haven't completely formulated your thoughts, and you may say something out of line, but that's the way I roll. And if I have to correct something, I will later on. But that's how you learn, and that's why you can't suppress speech, because sometimes you will stuff up and say the wrong thing, and that is only a corrective element. You shouldn't be banned or censored or thrown out of society or put in jail or fined or horrible things like that, because you need to be able to be given the opportunity of being able to correct yourself, put yourself on the right path, and come up with a different view, or stand your ground and stick to your guns. But thank you everyone for watching. I really do appreciate it, and hopefully next time we'll be back with our normal regular interviews. we hopefully will have some great guests lined up in future. But this was something new. It was interesting. It was exciting in a lot of ways, and we'll see if I end up doing another one of these on my own in the future. So if you think it was good, let me know in the comments. If you think it was rubbish, let me know in the comments. It's the only way that I will know. But thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks a lot.